Hi, this is Ali Arango of Little Guy CGI, and in this video I would like to show you how to make a transforming robot in Blender 2.79. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, User Preferences, click on Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe programs or other 3D programs. Also, while you're in here, click on Add-ons, put a check mark next to 3D View, 3D Navigation, put a check mark next to 3D View, Copy Attributes menu, scroll down, put a check mark next to Mesh, Auto Mirror, put a check mark next to Mesh, Edit Tools 2, Mesh, F2, Mesh, Inset Polygon, Mesh, Loop Tools, as well as Mesh, Relax. Put a check mark next to Pi Menu, 3D Viewport Pi Menus. Also put a check mark next to Pi Menu, UI Pi Menu Official. I know these are a lot of add-ons I'm telling you, however I want to you to be able to follow along with the tutorial. Put a check mark next to Rigging, Rigify as well, and I think that is it. Okay, the last time I did a transforming robot tutorial, I did it on a air vehicle turning into a robot. This time we're going to do it on a land vehicle turning into a robot. To manipulate your view in Blender, if you click on the display tab, you can use these buttons right here to maneuver your view around that way. If you hold the middle mouse button, you can rotate your view. If you hold shift and the middle mouse button, you can pan your view. Currently we're in object mode. If you look right here, you can see which mode we're in. If you look right here, you can see the view that we're in. So currently this is user perspective view. If we click here, we'll go to front perspective view. If we want to go to an orthographic view, we can use this button right here. Now we're in a front orthographic view. Okay, the first thing we're going to make is we're going to make what our robot turns into. So this is going to be our land vehicle. So currently we're in object mode. In object mode, you move around whole objects like this cube. To manipulate vertices, edges, and faces, you go into edit mode. So if you look right here, you can see object mode. We're going to click here, then we're going to select edit mode from here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold control in the middle mouse button to zoom into the view. I could also have rolled my middle mouse button. When you hold control and then hold the middle mouse button and push in or out, that tends to give you a smoother view. If you look right here, you can select vertices, edges, or faces right from here. What we're going to do is press the A key to deselect everything. We're going to click here to go to face select. We're then going to click here, hold shift. So we're clicking on this front face right here. I'm holding shift, then I'm clicking the top right here. Okay, so with these two faces selected, we're going to do a special kind of extrude. We're going to extrude individual faces. So to do that, we're going to hold Alt. While holding Alt, we're going to press E. This brings up our extrude menu. Then we're going to select individual faces. So I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to pull my mouse down, and then I'm going to left click again. I'll roll the mouse wheel to zoom back so you can see what we have here. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to press A to deselect. And what we want to do is we want to put a mirror modifier on this. Now if I click here, and then I click here, and then we look for a mirror modifier, we could select this. This is another way of doing it, and it's useful. We need to put a mirror modifier on here. However, Blender 2.79, we can click Tools. I'm going to hover here to pull this out. I'm going to scroll down. See where it says Auto Mirror right here? We can click here. Now when we select Auto Mirror, Blender automatically puts a mirror modifier onto our mesh right here. It also puts a check mark next to clipping. Very useful and very nice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to press A to deselect, A to select everything. Then we're going to pull to the side here. Now it looks like this is scaling to the side. What's basically happening is we're pulling our actual geometry away from our virtual geometry. However, this clipping option is making it so that basically when we pull to the side, it looks like we're kind of scaling. So, okay, so with that done, what we want to do is hold the middle mouse button to turn to look at the back of this. We're going to press A to deselect. We're going to click here, hold shift, and click here. Shift just allows us to select more than one face at a time. We're going to press X to bring up our delete menu. Then we're going to choose faces to delete. Okay, now what we want to do is I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. See this mirror modifier as far as the options? You see right here, we want to put a check mark here on the y-axis. And what that did is now our mirror modifier is mirroring from left to right as well as from front to back. So I'm going to press A to select everything, and then I'm going to push forward like this. And this just allows us to work faster. So essentially the only actual geometry is this right here. Okay, so with this done, what we're going to do now is we are going to click the top part of our roof here. We're going to push this down some like that. We're then going to press S to scale on the Y axis like this. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to click here, make this longer in the front. I'm going to click here. I'm going to push this top towards itself like that. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm now going to click here. I'm going to press E to extrude. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to take the manipulator and push forward like that. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. What I want to do now is I'm going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to press the right key, and I'm going to move my mouse so that this loop cut, that's what we're putting in now. Control R does a loop cut. We're going to left click once, because we only left click once, we can move this loop cut up or down. We're going to leave the loop cut where it's at, so we're going to left click to lock that in. Then we're going to press A to deselect. Okay, we're on edge select right now. We're going to hold Alt. We're going to click here. So we're clicking this bottom edge. I'm going to hold Shift as well as Alt, then click here. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button. Okay, so we have all this. Actually, I'm going to press A to deselect. I was thinking we didn't have a bottom for whatever reason. I'm going to press C. We can select right here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I right click to get out of paint select. By the way, that's when you press C, that activates paint select, and you can just paint selections. Very useful. I'm going to take the manipulator. I'm going to push this down like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hover here. I want to put 5 loop cuts in right here. So I'm going to hold Control, then press R. I move my mouse because I want a vertical loop cut. So there's 1 loop cut right there. So I'm going to roll the mouse. There's 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So I'm going to left click once and then left click a second time to lock those loop cuts in. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to click on phase select. See this right here? See how our cabin right here is? We don't want, in this next thing we're about to do, pay attention to this. You don't want to select this. You want to select the faces from here to this. So right here, you don't want this, you don't want this, right? Basically what we're doing is we're making an area for the tire to go. So we're going to press C for paint select. And then we're going to, with paint select, by the way, if you roll your mouse wheel, you can make it smaller or you can make it bigger. We want to select these faces right here. So there's 5 faces selected. We're making sure we don't have the face that's, you know, closest to this cabin here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press X, which brings up our delete menu, and then we're going to choose faces to delete. And then with that done, what we want to do is go to our vertex select. We want to look at this right here. So these 2 center vertices, we don't want them. We want to go to the side of that here. So I'm holding shift. Because I'm holding shift, this allows me to select more than one vertex at a time. I'm pushing down, and basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to make a circular shape here. So I'm going to click here, hold shift, and click here while holding shift, and I'm pushing down again. And I'm just trying to get a circular shape. So I'm reselecting here because I'm like, okay, can make it look a little more circular by pushing that up. And now you can kind of see the advantage of having the mirror modifier set up like this. The work that we do here is also the work that we do there. Why? It does that because of this mirror modifier. So I'm going to press A to deselect. See how we have these vertices and edges up along with this? We don't want that. We want these to be aligned right here. So we're going to click here, hold shift, and click here. We're also going to click here as well as here. So I'm holding shift, and now I'm just going to take the manipulator and push this down. And I just want this to be a fairly straight, you know, line in alignment with what's going on with this tire area here. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. I'm going to press A to select everything. I'm going to widen this by pulling on this manipulator. I'm going to press A to deselect. We want to make this be a little bit less boxy, so we're going to hold control. While holding control, we're going to press R. That put one loop cut in. We're going to left click once. Left click a second time to lock that loop cut in. We're going to press A to deselect. We're now going to go to face select, hold Alt, and then while holding Alt, click right here on this edge. Because I was holding Alt, I selected this entire row of faces, and now I'm just going to push forward. And this just helps to take away some of the boxiness of our shape. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is hover here. We're going to hold control. While holding control, we're going to press R. And we can see the loop cut preview like that going from front to back. That's what we want. We're going to left click once because we only left click one time. We can move this loop cut down. So we're going to move this down. We're going to left click in a second time to lock that in. Now what we're going to do is press A to deselect. We're going to left click here. We're going to hold control. Because I'm holding control, I am going to, the next time I left click, I'm going to activate something in Blender called the shortest path. So, or the shortest path selection, I guess it is. I'm going to, while I'm holding control, I'm going to left click here. Blender, and now I'm letting go of control. Blender just selected shortest path from here to here. So I didn't hold Alt, I held control. I did that because I want to pull this up some. So I'm just going to pull that up some like that. Then I'll press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go to face select. We're going to hold shift as well as Alt. We're going to left click right here. I'm still holding shift and Alt. I'm going to left click there. Now I'm letting go of Alt, and then I'm clicking here as well as here. I'm letting go of shift now. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, and I'm just extruding to the side like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold shift to click this front part. I'm going to push this forward like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is look to our mirror modifier. We're going to click this, unclick on the x-axis, and now we're just mirrored from front to back. We're going to go to where we see edit mode. We're going to click here, go to object mode, and then we're going to select apply to apply that mirror modifier. We're then going to look, we're in our tools tab right here on our left. We're going to left click on auto mirror to bring our mirror modifier back on. Now the reason why we did that was we now want the front of our land vehicle here to look different from the back. However, we want to still take advantage of being able to work on this side as well as having the work on this side be applied to that side. So I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is make sure we're on face select. We're going to hover here, press C for paint select. There we go. There's paint select. We want to select all of this right here. Not that. If you select something you don't want, hold the middle mouse button and you'll deselect. So I'm going to right click to get off paint select. What we want to do is make it look like there's a hood here. So we're going to press E to extrude. We're going to right click. Doesn't look like I did anything, but I created new geometry when I right clicked. And because I have new geometry, I can press S to scale in like this. Now we don't want to scale in too far. See that little distance right here? That's good. Now what we're going to do is press E to extrude again. I'm going to right click. And then we're going to push down some like that. I'm going to press E to extrude again, right click to get that to stay in place. I'm going to press S to scale, not too much. And then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click to get that to stay in place, and then pull this back up like this. Again, I'm going to click here, go to object mode, and now we can see that there's a distinct separation between here and the rest of the vehicle. So I'm going to click here and then go back to edit mode. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is press C for paint select and then select right here. We're going to right click to get out of paint select. We're going to press E to extrude, right click to get our extrusion to stay in place, scale slightly, left click, press E to extrude again, right click, push this down a little, press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale, not too much, E to extrude, right click, and then pull this up like that. Okay, now what we're going to do is press E to extrude again, right click, press S to scale, and this time we actually want to scale on the x-axis to make this more narrow. So we're going to press S to scale on the x-axis like that. Then I'm going to take the manipulator and pull this back like that. And what I'm going to do is press E to extrude, right click. And the reason why I'm doing this is just so you can see the separation between the panels. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale, E to extrude, right click, and then pull this up like that. Now I'm going to press S to scale on the x-axis like this. Now I'm going to hold them the mouse button to take a look. I'm going to press S to scale on the y-axis like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to go to vertex select. I'm going to click here. If your manipulator gets in your way, see how this looks like the manipulator. I want to select this vertex right here. It looks like this might get in the way. I can click here to temporarily take away my manipulator. I'll hold shift, click here, here, as well as here. I let go of shift. Now I'm clicking here to bring the manipulator back. So now what I want to do is pull this back like that. I'm going to hold shift and click there. Pull this back. I think I want this. Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to press. I'm going to press A to deselect. Just taking a look at this. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to face select. We're going to click here. We're going to press E to extrude, right click. We're going to press S to scale. Then we're going to press E to extrude, right click, go in something like that. Then we're going to press, let's, further can we go? Okay, like that, that's good. With this selected, we're going to hold shift, we're then going to press D, we're going to right click. When we press shift D, we duplicated these faces here. We're going to push these faces out like that. I'm going to hold shift and the mouse button to pan back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to move my mouse. We have a vertical loop cut going back and forth. I'm going to roll the middle mouse button 5 times. I'm going to left click to lock in. I'm going to left click to totally lock in. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to left click here, hold shift, left click there, left click there, and then left click here. So now I'm letting go of shift. I just, spaced out, right? So now with these here selected, I'm going to hold shift, press D, and then right click, push these away from here. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and then push forward like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. Let me see show you what's going on here. So these are separate pieces from this, right? We basically use this to form this. Now we're going to hover here. We're going to press L. When you hover over something and press L, you tend to select that whole object. So I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. Now what I'm going to do is press C for paint select. When I press C for paint select, I just selected just some of the faces on here, but I can hold control and then press L. And what that does is when you have an object like this, and you have part of the object selected, when you press control L, you select the entire object. So now I'm going to take the manipulator and push this like that. So then I'll press A to deselect. Okay, with face select still on, I'm going to click here. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, then press S to scale. Like this. I'm going to push this up like that. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, push out some like that. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale, and then E to extrude, right click, and then push back like that. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to click here, hold shift, then click here. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, push in like this. I'm going to press S to scale. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to click here. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, S to scale. I'm going to press E to extrude, and then I'm just going to take the extrusion line in like that, then press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to click here, hold shift. Actually, I'm going to press C for paint select and select this right here. Zoom it in just to take a look. What I'm going to do is press E to extrude. I'm going to right click. Now I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm going to select 0.95. So I scaled this to 95% of what it was by pressing 0.95. So now I'm going to press E to extrude. right click. I'm going to push in like that. I'm going to press let's see. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click. I'm going to press S.95 and then enter. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and then pull forward something like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, so this is going to be one door. I'm pretty much going to do the same thing right here. So I'm going to click here. Actually, I'm going to, just like before, I guess, I'm going to hold C for paint, select, and select here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click. I'm going to press S to scale, 0.95, and then I can enter. Press enter, or you could left click to lock that in. And then now I'm going to press E to extrude. I'm going to right click. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to push in slightly. I'm going to press S.95, then press enter to lock that in. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and then pull this out like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. Now what I'm going to do is go to face select. I'm going to hold shift to select both these faces. I'm going to go to our pivot point right here, right? Blender's default pivot point is the medium point. I'm going to select individual origins. The reason why this is important is this will allow me to scale both of these at the same time. Both of these windows is what they're going to be. So I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and then I'm going to press S.95, then press enter. I'm then going to press E to extrude, right click, push in slightly like that. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S.95, enter, and then I'm going to press E to extrude and pull out something like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to click here, hold shift. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale, 0.95, and enter. I'm going to press E to extrude, and this time I'll go in some like that. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, then press S.95, then enter. And now I'm going to press E to extrude, and this time I'm just going to come forward, something like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, we're going to roll our mouse wheel to zoom back. We're going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to hold shift the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to make sure we're on face select, which we are. We're going to click here, hold shift, and click here. We're now going to press S to scale on the Y axis 0, and then left click to lock that in. I'm then going to press A to deselect. I'm going to zoom in, hold shift to the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to go to vertex select. I'm going to click here, hold shift, and click here, here, here. Zoom in. I'll click here. Here, you want all of these vertices right here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. Now I'm going to hold Alt, and then while holding Alt, I'm going to press O. What that did was that turned on this right here. This is called the connected proportional editing tool. And a proportional editing tool allows you to move more than one vertice edge, or it allows you to move more than one vertice edge or face at a time. With that done, we selected this, we can pull this back. So we're going to press G and then Y, and we'll just pull this back just like that, and then left click to lock that in. Now we'll press A to deselect. Press A to deselect. Okay, we're gonna roll the middle mouse button to zoom back. We're gonna get a face select. I'm gonna press the O key to go back to regular proportional editing, and then I'm gonna press O again to turn off proportional editing. I'm gonna press C for paint select. When I first came in to this particular video segment, as I was deselecting, when I start the recording, typically I have to click on the screen to have it activate, so I click the vertex by accident. Okay, so with this selected here, I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'm going to press Y with this area selected. Now when I pressed Y, all of this area that's selected is now separated from the rest of our object here. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to press E to extrude and then right click. And then I'm just going to bring this up here like that. Hold them the mouse button to take a look. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, we're going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I want to bring more attention to right here, and I would like this to be more circular. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click here. The reason why we're right clicking here is to put the 3D cursor here. Wherever the 3D cursor is at in Blender is where objects tend to come into Blender at. So we're going to hold Shift and then press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're then going to go to Circle. So now we see this circle right here. We're now going to click here to go to Vertex Select. I'm then going to press R to rotate on the Y axis, -90, and then press Enter to lock that in. I'm going to rotate my mouse so I can see where I'm at as far as 3D space. Push this close to this area here. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hover here, hold Shift, press B, then draw a zoom box to zoom in. I'm going to roll the mouse back some. I'm going to pull this ring of vertices. I want this to be a little bit smaller than right here. So I'm going to press S to scale. Push that down. Move this closer. I pushed it down here because basically we're going to take away half of these vertices, so it's this top part that we want to, come close to matching up with that. So I'm going to press S to scale. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to press E to extrude and then right click, and now I'm going to press S to scale like that. See how we have this dark shading here? This is because our normals are not facing the correct direction. Normals are basically, in this sense, normals are the correct way that they should face. They can either be facing inward or outward. They're not facing the correct direction here. So to fix this situation, have them face the correct direction, we can just hold Control, press L to select our entire piece of geometry here. Then we'll just hold Control and then press N, and then what that did was Control N recalculated the normals. So now I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to click on Edge Select. We're going to hold Alt. We're going to, while holding Alt, click right here. That allowed us to select that entire loop of right there. So we're going to press E to extrude and then right click, and then we're going to push this over like that. Then we're going to press A to deselect. And what we want to do is basically have this match up with here. So this here matching up with that there is my current thinking. Then again, no. No, I want to have this match up with here. Okay, so what we're going to do, and the reason why that's important is we're going to cut this. So we're going to make sure we're on the edge select. We're going to hold Alt, then click here, hold Shift, and then click here. Now we're going to press V. Now when we did that, we separated. So I'm going to right click to get that geometry to stay in place. We separated this piece from this piece. Basically, we cut this edge right here. So I'm going to press A to deselect. So long story short, we separated this edge. That's what V can do. So now with that done, we're going to click here, press L, and then press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. So now what we'll do is we'll go to edge select, we'll click here, hold Shift and click here. We'll hold Alt O to turn on a proportional editing tool, the connected proportional editing tool. The connected proportional editing tool allows us to move more than one vertex, edge, or face at a time, but it allows us to, in addition to moving more than one vertex, edge, or face at a time, it allows us also to not move what's right next to where we're selected on. So it will only affect this object. So with that said, we'll press G and then Z, and we'll just pull that down like that. Then we'll press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to press O twice to turn off the connected proportional editing tool. I'm then going to left click here and then select median point, which is Blender's default pivot point. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hover here. Let's go to face select. I'm going to hover here again now. I'm going to press L to select this entire piece of geometry. I'm going to hold Shift D to duplicate that. I'm going to right click. I'm going to hold Shift and middle mouse button to pan. Now I'm going to take the manipulator and pull this back like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, if I hold them in the mouse button, we can see right through there. We're going to fix that now. We're going to go to face select. We're going to hover here, press L. We're going to hide everything other than what we see selected. We're going to hold Shift, and then while holding Shift, we're going to press H. We're going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to press A to deselect. We want to go to edge select, hold Shift, then hold Alt, click here, as well as here. I'm now going to press E to extrude and then right click. We want to try to push this geometry here down to about there. So what we're going to do is take our manipulator and push straight down like that. Then we're going to press A to deselect. Okay, we need to straighten out this geometry. The reason why I deselected this was we need to do this one at a time so that this works correctly. So we're on edge select, we're going to hold Alt, we're going to click here, we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis 0, and then left click to lock that in. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. We'll pull this up so it's about there. I'm going to press A to deselect. Now I'm going to hold Alt, left click here, press S to scale on the Z axis 0, left click to lock that in, and then pull it up like that, then press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. We need to fix these normals. We're going to actually go like this so we can just grab the normals here. I'm going to press C for paint select. I need to go to face select. C for paint select. Select all of these faces here. So you can see here the normals aren't right. I'm going to press W and select flip normals. If Control N doesn't work, Control N is recalculate normals, then try W to flip your normals. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Same thing. I right click to get out of paint select. Now I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to press W and then flip normals. I'll then press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm then going to hold Alt, and then while holding Alt, I'm going to press H to unhide everything else. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Okay, now I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to select right here. I'm going to right click. I'm then going to press E to extrude, then right click, then press S.95, then enter. I'm then going to press E to extrude, right click, push down some. I'm then going to press E to extrude, right click, S.95, and then enter. And then I'm going to pull up like that. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom in more. I'm going to press S for paint select, click here. Then I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to deselect there. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click. I'm going to press S to scale. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, push down some. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, then press S to scale. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and then pull up. Now I'm taking a look. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press C for paint select and paint right here. I'm going to right click, press E to extrude, right click, press S.95 and enter. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view, push in. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, S.95, then enter. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, then right click, like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan, control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to click here, hold shift, press E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, right click, push in, E to extrude, right click, S.95, and enter. Then E to extrude, and then left click, then press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. We're going to left click here and then click here to go to object mode. We're going to click on the display tab here. Click here to go to front view. We're going to hold shift. While holding shift, we're going to press C. We did that to put our 3D cursor right here, right in the center of our view. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Now what we're going to do is we are going to hold shift, press A, and then we're going to go to cylinder, then left click. And for the cylinder, we'll click here. We'll take this to 8. We'll press enter. We'll also look, see where it says cap fill type ingon. We'll click here and select nothing. So the cylinder is right in the center of our ground vehicle here. So what we're going to do is with the cylinder selected, you can also see it selected here in the outliner. We're going to click here and then select edit mode. So here in edit mode, we'll pull this to the side. Move this up to here. I'm going to hold control and the middle mouse button to do a smooth zoom in. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan up. Control and the middle mouse button to do a smooth zoom in. Okay, what we're going to do now is press S to scale on the Z axis like this. Let's press S to scale to make this bigger. Now we'll press S to scale on the Z axis like that. Now what we're going to do is press A to deselect, go to edge select, we'll hold shift while holding alt, we'll click here as well as here. I'm then going to click here and change our pivot point from the median point to individual origins. We're then going to press E to extrude and then right click. Then we're going to press S to scale, like this. What we're going to do now is we're going to press, we'll press A to deselect, we'll hover here, we'll hold control, then press not hold Control, we'll hover here and press L, or press R to rotate on the Y-axis, -90, then left click. We'll get this closer here. If you have a, it's kind of hard to see the details here, so what I'm going to do is press N, scroll down and click ambient occlusion. Now we can see our model in the background better, much better, I think. Press S to scale. I'm going to press S to scale on the X-axis like this. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to look to our pivot point. We're going to change this from individual origins to our median point. We're going to press A to deselect. We're going to hover here, hold Control, while holding Control, press R. Roll the mouse wheel one time. So we have two loop cuts. We're going to left click once, left click a second time. We're then going to press S to scale on the X-axis like this. We're then going to press A to deselect. We're then going to click here to go to face select, hold Alt. Then while holding Alt, left click here. We're then going to hold Alt, and then while holding Alt, press S. Hold Shift and then pull down, and then left click to lock that in, and then press A to deselect. Okay, I want to focus just on this tire without seeing this in the background, so I'm going to click View Global / Local. Now I can focus just on the tire. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click here for edge select. I'm going to hold Alt, left click here because I was holding Alt. I selected that entire loop. I'm going to press S to scale down. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, and then extrude out like this. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale, then E to extrude, right click, and then push this out like that. I'm then going to hold Control. While holding Control, press F to bring up grid fill. I'm then going to left click on grid fill. Now I did that because if I pressed F, I would have just got a flat plane, but I wanted what you see here. I wanted the geometry to be better suited to what's right here. So grid fill is very useful for that. So I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan the view. Okay, now I'm going to, with edge select on, I'm going to hold Alt, click here, press E to extrude, right click, push N. I'm then going to press E to extrude, right click, and press S to scale like this. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to push in like that. I'll push in more like that. I'm going to press E to extrude, then I'm going to right click, pull this out like that, press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale, E to extrude, right click, push in like that, hold the middle mouse button to take a look. Now I'm going to hold Control, and while holding Control, press F. This brings up our Faces menu. I'm then going to select Grid Fill. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, now I'm going to go to Face Select, hold Alt, click here. I'm going to pull this forward like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm now going to press C for Paint Select and select these faces here. I'm going to right click. Then I'm going to hold Shift, press D, then right click. I just duplicated those faces there. Now I'm going to pull these faces out, or this piece of geometry out like this. I'm going to go back to our pivot point, change this from Blender's default pivot point, which is the median point, to individual origins. Now I'm going to hold Alt, and while holding Alt, press E. This brings up our extrude menu. I'm going to select individual faces. I'm then going to right click, then going to press S to scale like this. Pull that forward like that. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to select that edge, hold Shift, then hold Alt like that. I'm going to pull, I want to pull all of this forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Alt O, to turn on our connected proportional editing. Now I'm going to press G and then X, and I'll pull that all forward like that. Then I'll left click, then press A to deselect. I'll press O to turn off our connected proportional editing tool. Okay, now I'm going to left click on face select. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to hold them the mouse button to rotate the view. Select all these faces here. I'm going to press E to extrude, right click, press S to scale. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, push forward, then left click. Then I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose faces to delete. Okay, now I'm going to hover here, press L, take the manipulator and push this back like that. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm in local mode. I'm going to click view global / local, click here. Now what I'm going to do is press A to select this entire tire. Just hold them in the mouse button to rotate, pressing S to scale, positioning that. Okay, when we brought this cylinder in, or brought the cylinder in, turned into this tire, we made sure that we had our 3D cursor in the center of our scene. We did that because where the 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. I'm going to click here and change this pivot point from individual ordinance back to the medium point. And because we did that, what we can do is go to our tools menu, look down and select auto mirror. So now we have a tire right here. Now what we're going to do is click here, go to object mode. Here's our mirror modifier options. We're going to put a check mark here. So now we have all of our 4 tires now. Okay, what we're going to do now is unclick the X-axis here. We're going to select apply. We're then going to left click on our auto mirror again. And the reason why we did that was I'm used to working from a left to right mirror, but not so used to working from a front to back mirror. This tire looked like it needed to be moved a little, so I'm going to press C for paint select. Then I'm going to hold Control, then press L. I'm going to push that forward, then I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm just holding the middle mouse button to take a look now. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back some. Okay, I'm going to click here, go to object mode. When we look at our car, it looks very blocky. We can solve that easily with a subdivision surface. So what we're going to do is we're going to left click here. We're going to go to subdivision surface here, left click. Then we're going to look to views, or look to view, take this up to 2. Now we're going to press Z and then select shade smooth. So now our car looks not blocky, but it looks too smooth, so we can deal with that fairly easily by going to add modifier, clicking here. We're going to go to a bevel modifier. We're going to left click to add that. The way modifiers work is it works from top down. So we have a mirror modifier first, our subdivision surface second, then our bevel modifier. We want to move this bevel modifier so that it is up above the subdivision surface modifier. So we'll click this triangle here. And now we're almost back to how we were before. And what we want to do is, with this bevel modifier, right now our limit method is set for none. We want to click angle. As soon as we did that, you can see things changed. We want to take this angle to about 45. Now that's, just in this instance, this is, the angle is 45, but by selecting angle and adjusting this angle, you can change what you see. And basically what we're doing is we're doing what's called hard surface modeling right here. And the bevel modifier is a very easy way to work with this. And when I say work with this, I mean work with hard surface modeling. Okay, so this looks a lot nicer with us having hard edges as well as smooth edges. However, we have an issue here. issues here as well. This is easily fixed. We'll click here, we'll go to edit mode, we'll hover here, we'll hold control. While holding control, we'll press R to put a loop cut in. We want a horizontal loop cut that's going from front to back, so we'll left click once. We'll push up, not quite to the top. We'll press A to deselect. We'll stay hovered here. We'll hold control, press R. So I press control R to bring in another loop cut. We'll left click once. Because we only left click once, we can move this loop cut. And we'll go down, not quite to the bottom. We'll press A to deselect. We have this right here. So for this, we're going to hold control, press R, left click, and then go up like this. Not quite to the top. Press A to deselect. Now we'll hold control, press R, put in a loop cut going from front to back, left click. Because we need left click one time, we can move this down, and then we're going to left click again like that. We'll press A to deselect. Now we'll click here and then go to object mode. And there we go. Okay, we're going to click here, go back to edit mode. Let's look towards the back. And right here, we're going to hold control, press R, and then left click and go like that. Press A to deselect, hold control, press R, left click once, because we only left click once. You can move the loop cut, and now I'm going to press A to deselect. Now we'll click here, go to object mode, and that looks good. Excellent. Zoom back, just taking a look at it, looks good. Okay, for the tires, we're going to left click on them. We're going to use a shortcut. We're going to hold control, press 2. When we did that, Blender put a subdivision surface with a view of 2 onto our tires for us. So I'm going to press Z now and select shade smooth. Then I'm going to press A to deselect.